start at 6. 5:15, right?
5:15.
But, hi, we're on it. But Lisa's not here.
This one.
So do we want to hold until she's here?
Give her 2 minutes, it's according to that. Yeah, it's high on 5:15. We'll give her a couple minutes.
I know she's in town and more or less rested up, I guess, for her trip. I thought it went really well, actually.
Good.
Couldn't talk about it.
Okay.
So just one quick housekeeping item. The end of the conversation about SAFE was very rushed in our last meeting because we had to go straight into another council, into the state of the city.
Right.
And so we sort of got to this point where we were having a very important conversation and it got cut off. So I've talked to several of you about having an additional discussion around SAFE before we proceed. And I'd like to see if maybe we could do a special meeting, just knowing Lisa's going to be out of town. And I want to make sure you're a part of the dialogue. There's a couple of options. One, we could do the 4th Tuesday, because we don't have a scheduled meeting, and typically you guys have left Tuesday nights open. I'm happy to find another night if there's one that works better for you guys, or if you don't want to do it and you want to try and cram it onto a work session, we can, but I'm worried that there's not enough time to really give this the time it needs.
I would be concerned about that also. I think it needs its own time and place.
Okay.
So the 27th totally works for me if we do it at 6:30. Because we have library construction task force.
Well,
That's better for me
Park
anyway.
meets that night.
Park?
But
They're not meeting in the mornings anymore?
No.
Oh.
But they usually,
4:30.
yeah, 4:30 to 6. So they'd be done
So they'd
by
be done
after
too.
6:30.
yeah,
So
it's kind
start
of
at
late.
6:30.
That makes it a kind of a late.
It'll be the only topic. I won't add anything else. So this could be a 45-minute conversation or it could be a 2-hour conversation. It's up to you. We'll probably only be presenting for 20 minutes, half an hour tops. And then the rest of the time will be for you guys to talk about any thoughts or ideas or concerns that you want to discuss. Shane, Councillor Abma, does that work for you?
It does. I'll go late to the, I was just telling her that I got tickets to the Blazers game yesterday.
Oh, no.
I never go to the Blazers game, but I could go later. It's not huge basketball game.
You don't need to step off.
Then we are going to schedule that meeting for the 27th, and we'll make sure that staff is prepared with an additional staff report. We're going to focus on several things, some concerns that were brought up at the tail end of the meeting that I think we need to address, and then also some bonding issues and some basically timing around the bonding and those types of things. Assistant City Manager, Kelly Brooks, is actually going to be doing the presentation, though we'll have the other members at the meeting, just so that we can dialogue this. Okay.
And so are we saying 6:30?
6:30.
Okay.
Yep.
Could we do 6? Would that?
No.
Well, they have a library task force meeting.
The library construction task force goes from 5 to 6:30.
Yeah, and I like I said, I think we can still get you out of here by 9. That is my intention. It's kind of up to you as to whether or not you hit that time, but my
Say
intention.
9?
Oh, I would.
9 p.m.
Done before. Yeah.
45 minutes.
9?
Yeah, right. So if you guys can do this in 45, that's all I'm saying. If you can do it in
6:30.
45 minutes, great. If it takes you a couple hours, it's in
7:30.
your court.
So even 7:45, yeah.
Okay.
Second half. I got to get second half.
As long as you guys are the ones moderating that, I'm great with that. Yeah. No, I think it's well worth it. So thank you guys, and that's all I have
Well,
for
if I come, I'll just
that
come
item.
to Barb and sit here and stay then, so. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right, cool. So first up, we have the Open Streets event. And Jason and Jordan. All right.
And actually, because I think Lisa made this little preemptive statement before, I forgot my computer. It's not working at the moment, so I have my phone. If I check it, it's because I'm trying to make sure that things are working off-site. So apologies, but that's why I have my phone out tonight.
I think just generally speaking, ground rules, I think we all respect each other enough to know that if we look at our phones, it's because there could be a family emergency
Right.
or a technical emergency.
There's some of that going on too.
And so I would appreciate that you often extend me the same person.
Right.
Because I do have a
Yeah.
small child, and I know we all have personal, so
Right.
I'm never looking at my phone
I have a
for
granddaughter.
just checking
Score
a social
or-
media or a game score or.
Yep.
Yep,
Thank you.
agreed. All right, Open Streets.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Jordan and I are here tonight to talk to you about Open Streets, some options and ideas for 2018. Just get a little overview of kind of where I'm going to go with this presentation or discussion. We'll recap where we've been since the last Sunday Parkways event and the last time I came to council to talk about Sunday Parkways and Open Streets in general. Background and process for event research, and all the research kind of went into this staff report that you saw and this presentation. Touch on visioning goals, because I think they're important to make sure we kind of obviously align Open Streets and whatever events that we do at the city with the goals that you have all set. Talk about some options for Open Streets, including a loop route that looks most like Sunday Parkways, a linear route that's a little bit scaled back from Sunday Parkways, and then other summer event options should we go in that direction. Talk about budget and staff impacts to all of these, and then staff recommendation. So I was here in August along with Mitch Neiman to talk to you guys about the future of Sunday Parkways after, this was prior to the final one in September, to kind of get an idea from you where you'd like to take it, kind of what goals, and some things that from that discussion popped up that I just wanted to remind everyone about. We basically talked about how we wanted to make sure that the event wasn't just about bicycles, but obviously was more well-rounded about active transportation in general. We wanted to showcase some of our future greenways, such as Monroe Street, just like we have been. And we also decided a route through the Central Business District wasn't necessarily crucial, so we all kind of decided that maybe looking at the east side was our best bet for 2018 moving forward. Since the last Sunday Parkways event on September 24th, obviously the event was very successful. We pretty much doubled attendance from the first year. Weather was great. Everything went really well. Thanks to everybody that came out and volunteered and helped out. It was a really fun time. City and Council thanked PBOT at their November 7th meeting with a cake and some fun exchanges of pictures and that sort of thing to basically say thanks for the last 2 years of the great partnership that we've had with Portland. So in terms of all the information that you saw in the staff report, it all came from internal discussions that we've been having here with staff amongst ourselves. There have been some efforts to fundraise with a few city councilors. We've been in discussions with Portland staff really for the last couple of years about kind of what it takes to do these types of events. Mitch Neiman and I met with staff there a couple times last year just to get an idea of kind of how they go about these events, what it takes, and how they go about doing it. And I've had discussions with Axiom Event Productions who have given us a proposal for two options that I want to talk about. And both of those options do assume that we would be working with Axiom to help us with route management and volunteer management. They're the ones that basically help Sunday Parkways and have been for many years. So they're really the experts when it comes to volunteer management and route management, these types of events. So when I mentioned this, the visioning goals, again, I wanted to try to make sure everything we do ties into them, and just wanted to put up super action number 5, cultivating a sense of community culture and belonging by encouraging public involvement and so forth. And then the priority areas, so supporting community activities and neighborhood events that bring residents together, and supporting and funding events and celebrations that showcase the community. And obviously, I think we're all well aware Sunday Parkways does all of that and more. They're great events and they accomplish a lot. So really anything we do moving forward, obviously we'd want to look at those goals. So option number 1 that we looked at, and really, like I said, coming up with these 2 options that I'm going to talk about was in collaboration with our consultants and really looking elsewhere, what other places do, similar sizes to Milwaukee, bigger, smaller, all of that, just to get a sense of this is what the event could look like if we were very much wanting to follow Portland's model.
And Jason, just to clarify, so when you say our contract, we are not under contract right now.
No.
So they are doing this on a volunteer basis right now.
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure that people know that part is not determined. So we are not actually in contract with them, and they are not receiving any payment for this at this time.
Right.
Thanks.
They basically gave us a bid, essentially, and a contract proposal to do this if we wanted to hire them, just like we would if we would put it out to bid.
Thank you.
So the loop route, here's the map, and I wanted to make sure I clarified something that was a mistake in your staff reports. It does not go up 32nd Avenue, it actually goes up 29th, just as we have done for Sunday Parkways. The translation for me, the GIS, when we actually made the map, ended up having it go up 32nd, and since it looked exactly the same shape, it didn't even occur to me that it was going up 32nd. So all of the things that I want to talk about are based on the fact that it goes up 29th, not 32nd. The 2 stars that you see on the map are the proposed activity areas that we were going to have 2, which is Water Tower Park on your left and Ball Michelle Park on your right. So option 1, as I mentioned, it's consistent with Sunday Parkways. The loop route, other places that do similar are Lincoln, Nebraska, and Fargo, North Dakota. This type of loop route requires a lot of soft closures, meaning basically that you use volunteers to kind of make sure that people who live along the route can get in and out of their houses if they need to, get through the route, all of that. This type of a route with 5.5 miles takes about 200 to 300 volunteer shifts. What that means is about 175 plus unique volunteers, and that's pretty typical of a Sunday Parkways event. It does also require some paid professional flaggers. Just to give you an idea, we had about 15 intersections in Sunday Parkways that required paid flaggers, and that's 2 to Milwaukee.
In Milwaukee's half?
No, for the whole route.
The whole route.
The whole route, yeah. And that requires 2 to 3 flaggers per intersection, depending on how. And I'll talk more about that when we talk about costs and that sort of thing. Some other attributes of this particular route: it travels through 4 of the 7 neighborhoods, which is great. You get more than half of the neighborhoods in Milwaukee. It includes Monroe Street, which is a future greenway. It takes advantage of the Springwater Trail, which really helps us with traffic management, that sort of thing, taking advantage of the trail. And also highlighting the fact that people can get to the trail through different ways, which is kind of what we want to make sure we highlight.
And get to the event.
And get to the event using the trail.
Yes.
Right. And as I mentioned, this could include 1 or 2 activity areas in the parks that I mentioned. What it also has is the highest cost, just because of the sheer length of it and all of the route management that would be required. So option number 2 is a linear route. Actually, it should be. It should be 1.8 or. Right, it should be 1.8 miles.
That's what I thought.
Sorry about that.
Staff report said.
My fault.
So a more linear route would look like this. We would have the Water Tower Park, as we have for Sunday Parkways, be an activity area. The street would be closed 40th, and then most of Monroe all the way to Linwood.
And do I understand correctly that both of those routes would go by the new Wichita Park?
They would.
They both. So.
Yeah.
So if it's happened to be ready, we could.
Yeah,
What is this, Wichita?
That gray.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And Wichita Park, it's I didn't mention it as an activity area mostly because of the unknown of whether or not it's.
Yeah, I don't think we could count on it being an activity area, but it could still be, there could be some kind of celebration thing there if it was ready.
For sure.
There could be something.
And the construction deadline right now on that is October.
Oh,
Just so you know.
So back up to the map for a sec, since we're there. One of the things that concerns me about this route is it kind of starts in the middle of nowhere and ends in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And when I say middle of nowhere, there's nowhere for anyone to park a car and get their bikes off the rack. There's no bike path that gets there. There's literally, it's like people will have to magically appear kind of at either end to
be
do
local
it.
to the route.
Or be local, or be somewhere in that neighborhood where they can easily get on it. I find this route a lot more problematic, actually, and thinking about how we get people to it than I do the other route because of the spring water. It's
in this type of route, I mean, in talking to consultants and how they have worked with other cities that do a more linear route, a lot of it's based on the idea that you're closing a major street and it's more like a big block party. So I guess the reason I say that is I think the thinking is that the goal changes a little bit in terms of what you're looking to do. You have an activity area, it's not necessarily a bike ride as much as it is we're closing a major street to make a statement that we're going to take the street back and open it up to people. So it doesn't accomplish the bike route ride as well, obviously, than a longer route that's a loop.
And I think in most of those places, those linear routes are typically through commercial,
they can be
big. They're not
They
some
do
back street
like Park
thing.
Avenue in New York City.
Exactly.
And it's also 4 miles. It's
Right.
not
It's
just
through major areas with things like parking lots where people can park their cars, and it's a lot different than just kind of being in the middle of the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things in here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one is using a greenway. So we were trying to come up with a shorter route that still used a greenway. That greenway doesn't have a great parking lot anywhere near it.
No.
So if we want to give up Monroe, we could do that. But part of this has been, what we heard in your visioning was that you wanted it to be along something like that.
Well, and the beautiful part of the other route is you got 3 greenways.
You do.
29th, Monroe, and Stanley.
It's just more expensive.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to come up with options that was a light version to the more expensive version if you guys wanted to try and do a light version, but totally legit. It's also harder when you live inside that circle to get out of a circle.
Were we wedded to, if we're going with a linear route, it has to be this one? Or can we make some adjustments to
Stanley
the loop to make it linear?
From the Springwater corridor to Monroe.
Anywhere. Can't we just we can put this anywhere as long as the concern is
a possibility. In looking at different routes, really the main idea of giving you a 5.5 mile route and a 1.8 mile is kind of give you the idea of how much it's going to cost and what the impacts are. It could probably move. It wouldn't be that difficult to necessarily move a shorter route somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, it changes certain things, but yeah.
The reason, part of why this is cheaper is far less flaggers because you're not
Just
crossing
cross King once.
You are crossing King. Okay.
That's it.
But you're not crossing 32nd.
Yeah.
You still got railroad. You still got Johnson Creek for east-west travel.
Yeah. No, you could almost do this one without flaggers. King is pretty much it.
But the thing that makes a great block party is bringing lots of people, and without it being connected to some hub. The spring water is great because people will bring their bikes and their strollers that way. But if it's not connected to any way for other people to get there, we had 20,000 people come through last time. That's all of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So we brought a lot of people, and if we're able to advertise it and get it to the same audience who showed up last time, then it should be accessible to them.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
So basically, looking at a route like that, there's other cities that do a sort of a linear format like this, so San Francisco, DC, and Pensacola, Florida. As we all talked about, you can do a little bit more hard closures. Obviously, people will still live on the route, so you'd have to be flexible with some of the people that are living on the route, but certain areas could just be closed and maybe you wouldn't need as many volunteers. So it really cuts down the volunteer needs and paid flaggers and that sort of thing a lot. Probably 100, 200 volunteer shifts, about 100 or more unique volunteers. Again, all of that is an estimate that our consultants provided, or potential consultants provided.
Thank you.
Sorry, I keep saying
No,
that.
that's great.
So a couple more attributes of that. Obviously, Water Tower Park and 40th and Harvey worked really well for our activity area up there. Last couple years, we had a lot of room. We have control over it because we own it. So there's a lot of things that you can do there. It goes through 3 of 7 neighborhoods, which for as short as it is, that's a good thing. It includes Monroe Street as a greenway, and obviously it's lower cost than the loop for route management needs. Just to give you an idea of what the activity areas would typically look like, we would look to have live music at them. We would obviously want to have food and vendor booths, just like we did at Sunday Parkways. We'd want some family-friendly activities. The bicycle obstacle course is available to us. I'm pretty sure Andy would bring it back. We'd have to rent a bouncy house, mini golf. We'd have to find a vendor, or maybe Portland would let us use theirs. Circus Cascadia was something that they hired last year up at Water Tower Park. It was really popular.
But I was going to say, there's a church that's been bringing a free bouncy house to Ardenwald concerts. So
Gotcha.
there could be some. There could be some.
They basically bring like stilts and hula hoops and like all this circus equipment that people can use, and they have people there helping you use it. So it was pretty funny to watch, fun to watch people trying to walk on stilts and all that kind of stuff. But people really liked it.
I learned how to balance a broomstick on another broomstick.
Nice.
Wow. It's very fun.
And then all of the event basics, we would look for bike racks at each one. Sunday Parkways, we had 65 spaces at each one.
Is that what they had last year?
Yeah, we could look at more if we needed them. Chairs and tables, portable restrooms, obviously trash and recycling, all that fun stuff would have to be there. So the proposed date for an event, after looking at sort of a lot of different Sundays, we were proposing to keep it on a Sunday, just like Sunday Parkways. Sunday seems to be the best for traffic. August 5th does not conflict with Sunday Parkways events that are happening in 2018 or the Bridge Battle.
And bulky waste.
Right, exactly, at our bulky waste event, so that we're not competing with that in any kind of way.
Putting nails into the road.
Yeah.
With your bike. Yeah.
And the first Sunday in August is, moving forward, if we chose to do this, it's good for marketing, just to say first Sunday in August. And weather. The weather's favorable in August, so we want to keep it that way if we can. So I was going to turn over to Jordan to talk about option number 3, which basically is if we decide not to do an open streets event, kind of some other options and ideas that we have been talking about. So.
And we mainly explored this option just to do our due diligence and also kind of, sort of a scenario in which we didn't have any extra funding, if we couldn't rustle up any grants or sponsorships or anything like that. Like, what could you do with the $20,000 that's already been allotted to an event? And so we looked at a couple different things. The first was just looking to kind of help out at some of the other downtown events that are already planned, because it would be easy to add on to their events, and it's logistically a little bit, it's not as hard to create your own event if you're just kind of hitching on with another event. Plus, it helps us strengthen our partnerships and our friendships with our downtown neighbors. And we also liked looking at, especially like First Friday and Farmers Market for the summertime, because if there is a lot of construction and people are kind of maybe shying away from downtown, that if we helped out these events, that we might continue to bring business down here and keep the businesses going. We also looked at partnering with just some of the things we've been sort of hearing from the community in general. The Arts Committee has been talking about doing a lot of activities, and they saw success with their Maximum Music Happy Hour, and so just kind of throwing out some ideas, looking to work with them and see what we could do to help them. Plus, you'd already have volunteers with them to work with. Beer Store Milwaukee's come to us several times talking about holding a craft beer festival or doing something like that could even combine other elements like music or family-friendly activities, something like that. And then we did look into a music festival itself, just to kind of play up on one of the features that we've always heard really positive feedback from at Sunday Parkways. Everyone's really enjoyed the City Hall stage and the bands that have come there. And since we already know how to do it, it would be easier for staff to get in and kind of already have a game plan going forward. We also researched this too because from the community survey when we did that last year, a lot of people expressed a desire to do an event kind of like Milwaukee Days, and this could sort of fill that desire for like a festival type event if you chose to go this route. And then we just put on the left a sample budget based on numbers we've already been working with, and kind of show you how that would add up. And then if there was any money left over, and we could always plan if we were going this route to have money left over, those funds could be used to continue to strengthen the already really great events that people have been enjoying. Like Jason said earlier, we keep seeing more and more people come out to Umbrella Parade and Winter Solstice, and finding more ways to make those events even better and easier to stay out for longer, like with tents or with heaters and live entertainment, more food options, things like that. And then also if there's a chance to just really find more ways to thank our volunteers, because a lot of what we do here is based on the tremendous effort of volunteers and people pitching in together and finding more ways to honor them. Jason will go into the rest of the budget.
So to talk a bit about budget impacts, just to give you a general idea, so Sunday Parkways events, including staff costs for Portland's, most of their events cost about $94,000 when you add it all up. Their staff costs are about $35,000 typically per event, so that's kind of what they reported, for our 2016 event. Milwaukee, as you know, we paid $20,000 each year to participate in Sunday Parkways, and that went to the Portland in one lump sum. Some other funding that we've been able to utilize has been the county tourism grants, and that's mostly been used the last few years for our downtown activities and our marketing. So, all the fun postcards that you've seen and all that kind of stuff are, stuff on the electronic billboard on McLaughlin that so many people saw. All of that, this money was used for, including in the entertainment that was downtown. Those funding mechanisms, we get $20,000 a year, and then we put a committee together actually to make decisions on who gets what. So, we don't always know exactly what we're going to be eligible for from year to year. So we would expect to be in the same range, but again, it really depends on how many applications we get and what the committee decides. And we did receive a few other small grants as well over the last couple of years.
In 2016, that $10,000 came from Milwaukee's pool that Milwaukee administers, because as I recall, Mitch put into North Clackamas Chamber.
That's what I thought.
Some of their money that they administer.
I think that's all in this $10,000.
So it's some from both.
Yeah, because the 2017 one that I just reported on is the Chambers and our share. Our share was like $6,000, and the Chambers was like $4,000.
Oh, so we got money from the Chamber both years.
We did.
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, I reported on all of it together just at the beginning of the month, or end of last month. So yeah, again, we would hope that we can get around that amount, but we will see. So the budget impacts of each one, just to give a general breakdown, the open streets with 2 activity areas with a loop, the cost, it doesn't include staff costs, was $65,000. Obviously $20,000 we've already budgeted. Like I said, we would expect about $10,000 at least from the county tourism grants, and then hopefully, we can raise at least $5,000 to get us close to that point.
Well,
so
CMI pledged $2,500, so you could count on that. Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing I also, just to be clear on this grid, you also have the option of using general fund dollars. So when I say I asked for fundraise because that's what we've been talking about is fundraising it, but you do have the option. It's just going to be up with all of your other policy priorities for the year.
Okay.
Okay.
So one thing I also, just to be clear on this grid, you also have the option of using general fund dollars. So when I say I asked for fundraise because that's what we've been talking about is fundraising it, but you do have the option. It's just going to be up with all of your other policy priorities for the year.
Okay, and then, so, no, it's okay. Thank you. So with one activity, basically it kind of cuts it down about $10,000. We've basically come up to the point where most of the activity areas are about 10,000 when you add it all up. You could obviously reduce the costs depending on what bands you get and that sort of thing, but to get, we would look at top-notch bands because when I talk about what we want to do, it's very similar to what we've been doing for Sunday Parkways and keeping it to that level if we can. So that basically just reduces it to 10,000. The linear route starts to take it down because, well, one, because of the cost to our potential
Thank you.
consultant fees. There's a lot less volunteer recruitment and route management that needs to happen, so that reduces that cost quite a bit there, amongst other things. We'll have to rent barricades and all that stuff, and that reduces barricade costs and so forth.
Flaggers. Yeah.
Flaggers, exactly. And then obviously the other summer event, we would just stick with what's been allocated so far. This is just a general, looking at sort of who would all be involved at the city of Milwaukee in this event. Obviously my time would be the most, but there's engineers, there's facility staff who bring out our NDA trailer, there's, street staff to sweep and clean up and do all these types of things. This is generally an idea of what those costs would look like when you look at everybody who would be involved. And so it starts, all the way from the top at 41,000 all the way down to about 22 for, another summer event. And that's kind of the range in between. So after, looking at all of this, the staff recommendations, should we go an open streets route? Considering what it takes to do this the first year, especially when we're recreating a lot of, programs. So there's a lot of things that we're going to have to create from scratch that Portland has, they just plug and play. So, how do we get vendors to pay us? That's one thing. There's all these different things that we'll have to do. So, looking at all of that as a whole, we think a shorter route would make sense this first year, especially, given that we have less than 6 months, 5.5 months before the event would actually take place. There's obviously some challenges. We haven't actually budgeted for some of the costs that we would have to pay our potential consultants before the new fiscal year kicks in. So we would have to spend some money. And looking at their fees, they would be looking at probably 40% of the costs would be between March and June, and then July and August would be about 60% when they're ramping up to actually do the event. So it's like a 40-60 split. And then staff time commitments, obviously, we would probably want to look at hiring a temporary staff person to kind of help us with some of the vendor management, that sort of thing, especially. Yeah.
I thought that's what the potential consultants were doing, was handling.
They won't be handling the vendors. They'll be handling the volunteers, all the route management. They would do all the training of the volunteers, bring out all the equipment to stage it, make the packets for the volunteers, all of that kind of stuff. So in conjunction with our engineering staff, just like they do with Portland engineering staff. So the estimated cost of this route would be $43,000. Obviously, we would it's about a $9,000 shortfall that we would have to make up for with this particular route, the shorter route. If we don't go in that direction, then the alternative summer event, obviously we just gave you a really brief description of what that looks like. We would look at coming back to you with a little bit more idea of, more refined ideas for what some of those might look like. But we obviously welcome your comments and if we would go that route and what you think would work best.
Well, so I should probably report to you guys about the meeting Wilda and I had yesterday with Kaiser Permanente, who's the title sponsor for Portland. They were very encouraging. She did say something about how, budgets are done for the year. She definitely didn't promise anything. It did sound like we would hear from them in probably 3 weeks-ish. She did bring in her government affairs person as well, which happened to be somebody Wilda knows, because Wilda knows everyone. One thing I will say that she was particularly keen on was the fact that we did have it tied to Greenway, that we were tying it to our transportation system plan and kind of that kind of thinking, that it wasn't just a block party.
Well, in fact, she basically said that if it weren't tied to the TSP, that they wouldn't have much interest in it at all.
Interesting.
And she actually served, this woman, Molly Haynes, she serves on the Clackamas County Public Health Advisory Committee, is that what it's called? And so they were really quite engaged in Clackamas County things, and have you talked to this person, and have you talked to that person? And actually they brought up something which we haven't done the last 2 years, which is the school district. Of course, an August event, it's hard to get the school district involved, but there may be some ways that we want to try and reach out to the school district and get involved. But anyway, so what we pitched to them was a $20,000, to be the name sponsor, that's presented by sponsor. We'll know probably in early March, I would guess.
Yeah, and I felt that they want to do something, but I'm not. I didn't leave the meeting thinking they're going to find 20,000 and do it. But I did leave the meeting thinking there's a possibility of maybe 5 to 10 from them. They did indicate. She said something about next year.
Right.
Get it in their budget now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And they love the open streets, or Sunday parkways, whatever you want to call them. She participated. Molly participated in ours this past year. In fact, both years, was it? Or
no, I think just the second
just
year.
this one.
Yeah.
But she's done a lot of the other Portland ones, so it's an activity she sounds quite interested in, kind of passionate about. I felt gratified too that they spoke about reaching out to their other partners within Kaiser and finding out, what would it mean for their marketing department and what would it mean for their others, and that.
Right, because she's not really in control of she wouldn't be the one over the people who would actually staff their activity area or whatever they would want to do at the event. So she didn't, she couldn't speak to their availability for August 5th, and she was going to check on that.
Yeah.
Did they tell you when we should for next year get the request in?
Well, no, but just kind of history that I've had with various businesses like that and of that size, and those who plan as they do, is that like summer to very early fall of one year, you
for the
request
next year.
For the coming year.
Right.
The budgets are generally set by probably November, December for the coming year. Hardly ever does business ever work on a fiscal year like we do in nonprofits and government and all of that kind of thing.
And so there's that. We don't know what that's going to be. We do have, like I said, CMI has pledged $2,500, and I think there are a few other businesses around town where we could probably reasonably expect to raise those kind of figures, but getting to the 20,000 figure is
tough.
big.
Yeah. Well, when we were brainstorming, I think one of the meetings we had, I believe, if I recall correctly, we had some conversation about maybe seeking some financial assistance from the neighborhood associations, especially those that might be going through. Some of them have the financial wherewithal to be able to stipulate some money for something like this, and 500 or 1,000 from some of those would be beneficial.
And then the other thing, which I said to you guys in an email today, is I really think we could do a second activity area for cheap, for $1,000. I mean, you got to rent a porta potties for it, that might be. But I really think if we opened it up to the community to like some of the bike advocates or some of the PTA people or some of the NDA people. We just sort of opened it up to create a committee to here, you know, the city's going to program music here, and we're gonna open this park up for programming. You know, who wants to volunteer to pull that together? And like, you know, like was mentioned, the bike obstacle course belongs to a guy who lives in Ardenwall, and he's always brought it out for no charge. I think, you know, who knows what stuff people have, or, you know, create, you know, puppet shows, or, you know, craft things, or what it could be, you know. I mean, the Circus Cascadia, yeah, I think you said they spent $850, is that what your budget said?
Yeah.
You know, truthfully, I could put that together for $100. You know, I mean, I think.
But can you teach somebody how to?
Yeah, there you go. I want to watch the hula hoop
Liability
thing.
insurance to make sure I don't get sued.
I'm all for the hula hoops.
That would be awesome.
So I guess I just feel like the cost of the second activity area should not be a big lift. And as I said in the email, I also think the cost of the music could come down if we get pinched on that in that regard. But there were a group of people who, you know, the people who were, you know, kind of founded Bike Milwaukee and others who really advocated for all this, you know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And then once we partnered with Portland, they had such a structure and such a system in place, and use an Axiom and how you register to be a vendor online and all of that, that there wasn't much of a role for those people in the city to play. And maybe it's our opportunity to open it back up and see who will engage and who will step up.
Yeah, I would be interested in sort of, I don't know, getting a little more creative. I mean, I think a lot of the comments I heard last year from people in Portland who ride them all was that thus far, this had been their favorite. And a lot of it was because we had great bands and we had a beer garden, and that's not something that Portland necessarily, they don't do a beer garden. And they have bands, but they didn't have
The kind of bands we have.
the level of bands we have. When I was reading through this and I got to your third option there, I went, well, let's do both. Let's have a music festival rolling with beer, bikes. It'll be huge. But I just think there's opportunity to reimagine this. To take the basic concept of free streets, open streets that people can feel safe being on, and then what else could that be? And I know this would be heartbreaking, and it'd be me going back on my word from the thing, but maybe that means we take a year, and so we get on the budget for big, we start now. We go out and we say, okay, we are planning this for 2019. And so we want to get on your budget for, and if it is something, let's say it was a beer festival, then we've got Breakside. They might pony up serious money. I don't know, but the little L1 with one activity, it's going to...
It's not fun.
It's gonna be like, see what happened when Portland left Milwaukee? This is what Milwaukee can pull off, right?
I think if we do anything, you gotta do a loop.
It's gotta be something cool. I want
it has to be a loop. I just think it has to be accessible and people can get back and forth.
It needs to connect to the spring water or something, or the trolley trail or something.
End at the spring water. Maybe it's.
Stanley connects. You can connect the spring water that way.
So you could do spring water to Stanley to Monroe.
That aren't so isolated.
But I think if we're going to do this, let's hit it out of the park again, so that people are like, this is cooler than Portland's thing.
Yeah. Well, and is there an option for a loop that is smaller, that doesn't cross 32nd maybe, and stays? If we avoid 32nd and we connect to the spring water somewhere, east of 32nd, which I don't know where that would be, but.
You don't get-
Just down,
Yeah, it's like
no, not without
51st or whatever
pausing.
that is.
Well, you can cross Johnson Creek Boulevard, which
Right.
would
Yeah,
be
you don't want to do that. You don't want to do
Yeah,
that, no.
It also is not necessarily the highlight of where people want to hang
No.
out. So
Right.
great for what it is, just not all.
I guess I'm just trying to think, is there a smaller, like 4 mile, 3.5 mile, where we could
I
still
don't
do a
think
loop?
length is so much the problem, other than the volunteer question of
The
can we
volunteers
get
and the
on
flaggers,
question.
that's.
Well, the flaggers
that's
comes
the-
down to
How many
hard
Main Street,
intersections,
yeah.
right? How many big,
Right. So if you don't cross 32nd.
King, 32nd, looking for a loop that doesn't, or maybe crosses once. You know, there's one place where we cross a big thing. Then it's, you know, a couple of flaggers and volunteers. But I don't think the length is as critical as the route. But I do, and this is why I think bringing Bike Milwaukee, because Matt used to do this. He used to sit
Oh,
and
yeah.
figure out.
Yeah.
When we did the Sunday rides,
Right.
you know, he would come up with rides where we didn't have to cross crazy
Yeah.
stuff because we had to self-block those as we were going. And I don't think we should make a decision tonight, but I think we should start to pull together a group of people to start reimagining this, and start to think about what could it be. And soon, we're going to try and pull it off this summer. If we can't.
I don't want to get past that part. Actually, I want to talk about that for just 1 second. So there's the soon on the date, and then there's the soon on the budget.
Yes.
So they're two different soons, and the soon on the budget is like, we had talked about March 1. I think that's unrealistic. We're probably, though, looking sometime in March. I need an answer as to whether or not we have enough money to do what you guys want to do this year. If the vote is that you guys want to wait until next summer, you want to amass the money and then skip this year and do something bigger the next
Well,
year.
that's the other thing we could save up. That gives us $40,000 out of our budget.
It does.
And without spending any more money. Time to reach out to the big guys and get it on their budgets. Time to sort of really create something cool. I just don't want to do something that's kind of
Right.
lame.
Well, I mean, you know, when I brought you option
Just
1, I mean, I was trying to make a route that was a similar size, a similar length, and with 2 activity areas, kind of what we've been doing. You know, I wanted to make sure that you
Hey,
saw
we had 3
what
last
that
time.
looks like, because it was great. And I personally, I wouldn't want to recommend to you to do something less than we've been doing. I mean, you know, obviously that's not the direction I want to go. So I just say that to make sure you know that that's where option 1 came from. Option 2 was, how do I get this cheap to be cheaper,
Right.
and easier on staff, feasible. I mean, honestly, so that's where they both came from. And you can kind of extrapolate what the cost would be in between. You know, if it's 4 miles, it's going to be X, you know, between the two, basically. It doesn't change that much, you know, the route management piece anyways. Because really the activity areas, they're not, even if you spend $10,000 on 1 or 2 or $20,000 on 2, that's not where a lot of your cost comes from. A lot of it is the route management of 4 hours of street closures.
Well, it's kind of like you said, Mayor, if you start cutting back on the activity areas, that's the experience of the event.
Right, that's why you come.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, I had calls last year, people asked me to buy tickets to like see the vans. And I was like, what's free? They were like, are you kidding me? You know, actually, and that was cool. I never had that happen to any of our events. Somebody called to ask if I buy a ticket. So,
Yeah.
So it's really 2 questions. One is, we can buy you time. But the budget, I've got to set. So if we don't fundraise it and we're down this path and we don't have enough money, then we're in trouble. So I kind of either need a draft ed as to when we're going to make that call, or how we're going to do that piece, as well as then the other discussion that you're having about how much time we have.
And what's the deadline with Axiom?
you know, in talking to them, they'd want to get going in March, as soon in March as they could. Their time frame is, they would typically be started, planning, but March would still be fine. So
That's the other thing, it feels like we're behind the time.
We're already behind the 8 ball, and we haven't, the first time we're...
And Jason has a couple other events to plan in the meantime as well.
He does.
Just a couple.
And we're raising money for Electria.
Right.
And for park.
And the park. So what do you think about, like...
I don't like it, but
I know.
I will be less involved if we don't do it this year. I will tell you that. I will they'll be less committed to go out and fundraise and stuff.
I know the community wants
People love
Sunday
this
park
event.
race,
It's super
open
fun.
streets, whatever you want to call it.
It was
That's another reason why we did option 3 too, was that, if it wasn't feasible to do a bike route, you would still have a summer event that would still meet some of the vision and goals of bringing the community together and doing something. But, we could take a portion of that and do something, still do a summer event, just a small scale, but to continue to save up for another year.
Well, I was going to say, I like the idea of your other options. I don't think the farmers market necessarily wants you to do anything on Farmers Market Day, but I like the idea of helping to supplement First Fridays. I think they do, could use a little help in that regard. But what that doesn't do is, this is not in downtown.
yeah.
We need to be doing something on the other side of 224.
Well, and I think that beer festival option, I'm not advocating for any of the above, but the beer festival could be held anywhere. So if you wanted, you could take over a park somewhere else outside of downtown in order to make something cool. Water Tower Park is a little small unless you had like 4 beer vendors, and then you could have them go around the tower and still have a lot of people there. But I actually think you'd overflow that space. So I'm not sure that would work either.
If you don't mind if I
Please.
interject into that thought, I'm thinking back in my history of the festivals we've put together and the activities, and even the times I've helped with the city of Milwaukee and the Milwaukee Festival Days, but we used to do a festival with great help, by the way, on the music part of it from Angela Fox at Community Newspapers. They became a sponsor. It was something she really cared about. She knows all these bands, and so we just might want to think about that too, get her involved. But it takes almost a year to put together even a one-day decent festival. Or
We've talked about this before, I think.
Especially, yeah, we have. vendor people. It sounds really great to say, let's just have a craft beer festival.
It's crazy.
Or whatever.
It would be
but
insane.
You look at the Milwaukee Center, and I believe it was all year long they were working on their event. I forget the name of it. Untapped.
Right.
Uncorked. Thank you. Well, more of the wine festival. Yeah.
Untapped.
When we did a Clackamas festival. The name escapes me at the moment. The one where Angela was really integral in it. As soon as one year finished, we started working on the next one and getting the bands and getting the vendors. And the part that never worked out as well as we hoped was getting vendors. It just never was what we hoped it would be. The bands were great, but people coming, not so good, and vendors, not so good. But so I just, I don't say that to say let's not do anything, but we have to be realistic and think about the time frames involved, and quite frankly, right now, the only thing we kind of know how things go together is some kind of an open streets event. We don't really know how all those other festival type ideas or those downtown street party ideas or whatever, come together and what we need for that. But
I do think, just to be fair, I agree with you, first and foremost. For those of you who don't know, my mom was an events planner. This has been my life. I forgot, though, so that was really important. She will appreciate it tonight when I talk to her. We haven't done this event before. We've never done this event before. So I also just want to use some caution.
Yeah,
when
true.
we're talking about why staff needs more time, even in our calculations, it's because they haven't actually done this before. We've helped another agency do it.
yeah.
But I think that there's a certain amount of learning curve that is going to go into this experience. It's just going to cost us more hours. I'm not saying that's a cost to budget, and we're not asking you for additional budget for that, but it will be a cost of hours. Thank you. Is that fair? You're brilliant and all, but if
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Well, as my events go, we have sort of seasonal events. They're all clumped together, which makes it difficult. We have I have my December events, and I have my April events. And summertime, I'm also helping lots of other people with their events. So I get pulled into just about every event you can name in Milwaukee, I'm doing something. Either I'm making a sign or closing a parking lot or
Sharing those candlestick things.
and doing all the special event permitting and making sure the roads are closed and the police know about it.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of juggling that goes on in the summer. So when I think about this event, just keep in mind that I'm also involved in all of the other events.
Yeah.
And the ones that we don't sponsor, the ones that we do sponsor. So summertime is not, it's a busy time. So fitting this in, it will be a challenge, I think, for the two of us and whoever else has to be brought into it.
Which is part of why we put a temporary person into that calculation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think going back to the quality of the bands and the cost of the event areas, I just would throw out there that 3 of our neighborhoods do summer concert series. And it's my impression from talking to them about how much they spend, and I haven't asked them recently, but it's my impression that, they're spending about $1,200 to $1,500 a night between the sound equipment and the band, right? So if you think of the sound equipment, you're just keeping it longer. It's only a little bit more marginal cost. It's just the additional bands. I don't see why, you can't do a stage and 3 bands for under $5,000.
Yeah.
I think that's a place, and they get bands that draw people. They always have pretty good crowds at those neighborhood concerts. So
I'm just interrupting to say 5 minutes. So we're up here, so everybody knows. Okay.
And also a half hour over.
If we did wait a year, is there any benefit to the route? Does anything open up, become more dynamic, or
Well,
could use that?
Wichita will be done.
Wichita Park.
That's better.
But there's no parking associated with that park.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you have, yeah.
I mean, I think there's
I don't
some.
imagine that we connect these things to parking lots. That's not how people are getting
No.
into these things.
No,
No, but
it's just
when
that
they-
you've got to have
You've got to have a
You need
place
start and
space.
finish
to start.
somewhere.
Just people to start
Right.
and stop. And so right now, so how I got to Sunday Parkways last year is I rode from my house. We're talking about 20,000 people last year. I'd say, we'd be lucky if, how many, 6, 10? What percentage do you think were Milwaukeeans? No idea.
No way to know that.
So, it's a percentage, but it's probably smaller than the sort of Portland contingency fed in.
I mean, there are plenty of people in Portland events too that drive to the route. I drive to the route. I take my bike. I don't usually ride from home. Sometimes I ride light rail to the route, but take my bike that way. But there are, families that pull up the van and, park on one of the residential streets and take all the cars off, all the
Right.
bikes off.
It's just
Not everybody rides to the route.
because neither end of at least that route was anywhere.
Right.
It's going to fill up really fast.
Right.
If we do it on, if an end is on the spring water, or more than one end, then people can take light rail down and get on the spring water. People can come down the spring water from Portland. They can come west from Gresham, whatever they want to do. The spring water is a really good thoroughfare to get to.
Would there be any viability in having a parking area at the Public Services Building
Yeah.
at Johnson Creek?
It does mean
And
that you
then,
have a crossing.
if the route
You
could
got
start
people
somewhere
crossing
up there.
Johnson Creek, which is
I know that's
dicey if you're good on a bike.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I know.
We would almost have
But
to
I'm
put
just trying-
flaggers.
I was
If we
just trying to
made
think
that
what
an
the-
official parking lot, we would